Hi, it's Jen from Shabby Fabrics, back to make the yellow block with you. This one's called Cross and Crown. This classic block, this is our cross and these are the crowns in the corner. So let's get started. Some things to think about with this particular one. We'll be using our 7/8 inch ruler again. We have some 2 7/8 inch cuts. We have a 5 5/8 inch cut and a 3 5/8 inch cut. I don't want you to be nervous about those cuts. Those are very understandable measurements. We can walk through that, and we will walk through that on our ruler. So let's start off with our simple 7/8 inch ruler. The center of our cross and crown block is just 1 2 7/8 inch square. Now, sometimes you need to cut an entire strip of fabric because you're going to use it all. And sometimes you only need a small portion and you don't want to cut through the rest of your fabric, so you can save it for other projects. This is like that. So let's go ahead, rather than me cutting this whole thing to 2 7/8, I'm just going to roughly cut something bigger than what I need and put that aside for later. So let's go, I think that side I squared. I'm just going to square this whole thing up all over again. Love my ruler. Starting off with just cleaning up the edge, just like we did before. And I'm not even really lining up with this mat. I don't really need to be lined up with the mat because the ruler is what I'm using right now. So I don't want you to feel like you're completely locked in and dependent on your mat. You're not. Now, when I go ahead and square up an edge, absolutely, I like to go ahead and line up on something, and I need to line up on something. Once that line is clean and established, then my focus is back on the ruler, and that's my guideline. So let's go back to that 2 7/8 inch, and we'll cut that. Fabulous. That's the center of my block. For the points of my crowns, for this fabric, we need 5 5/8 inch. Now that's not a measurement you cut every day. I want you to be comfortable though with that measurement. It's a piece of cake. Each one of those lines on the Creative Grids ruler is 1/8. So you'll simply go to your 4/8, which is the half, and go one more tick mark over and you're at the 5/8. So nothing to be stressed about. In fact, I think we might have already cut this one to the measurement that, actually no, this one's not cut down. I believe this one's already cut to our 5 5/8. Measurements are in the download, of course. Yes. So I just want you to notice this. See how this is riding right along this line. 1 2 3 4 5.5. Then there's the extra tick mark, and it rides right along that all the way down. Let's do that together though. This piece is cut to 3 5/8 inch. Again, I don't need to cut this whole thing. I'm just going to cut a piece that's, say, maybe 4 inches, something like that. Let's put that aside. That's great for a scrap quilt. So we're going to square up. I want you to get comfortable with these measurements. 3 5/8. So I'm going to go to my 3.5. And I'm going to see, there's my 3.5. 1 2 up. There's my 3.5. 1 2 3.5. I'm going to slide over one more tick mark. Just one more. And now I'm where I need to be here. We'll simply turn and do this again. One of the things I learned about quilting early on, quilting is not difficult. Accuracy in pressing, accuracy in cutting, accuracy in sewing, you're going to have beautiful quilts. So I definitely take a lot of time to double check my measurements to make sure. 1 2 3.5, but I'm going to slide over one more tick mark to get that 5/8. And I'll go ahead and give that a cut. Okay. Now that is for these in the corner. So I'm going to go ahead. This is where I love the spinning mat. Let me show you without the spinning mat how you would manage this. You're going to cut that and then potentially coming in from the side. I don't like doing that. Me trying to kind of get to the side like this is very unusual. That's why I love having the spinning mat. In fact, let me just grab that. Normally I wouldn't not have cut that without the spinning mat, but I'm just going to put this back on here and reassemble it. Put that back. I'm going to rotate that now so it's natural. I can see what I'm doing. I don't accidentally miss that point. As you can see with these blocks, they're all based on precision, and these go in these corners. Once you have all of your pieces cut, that's all in the download, so don't worry about any measurements right now. Once you have all of those cut, we'll bring them out to our design board. So I've got all of my pieces laid out. The assembly is very straightforward. Pressing is significant, so I'm going to have the back of the block so you can see what we're doing. Again, pressing needs more press because it's important. Helps our blocks lay flat, our quilts look better, quilts just hang better too. These two pieces come together, right sides, sew 1/4 inch, and press. Notice how on every time that we sew the triangles together, we're pressing toward the yellow every single time. And how this triangle and this triangle are different. Triangle on the left, triangle on the right. Very important that you don't get ahead of yourself and try to do a bunch of bulk sewing. So I would do one section at a time, just because you're not doing a whole quilt of this, you're doing one block. So don't rush the process. You're pressing toward the yellow. Then once that's done, I'm going to take that out of place. Okay, that was here. We simply brought that right sides together, sewed, pressing toward the white. Replace that. We'll go ahead, sew those together, as we said, pressing toward the yellow, just like we're showing here. Everything's pressed to the yellow. Then, let's just do that part together real quick. Let's sew this part together. Oh, you know what? We've got one right here. Ready to go. Let's just go ahead. Right sides together. Take that to the machine. So we'll set our seam. Let's look at the back of our block again. So that's this portion. Well, let's look at the back. So you see how this lies nice and flat. We could have pressed the seam back here, but then you'd have probably had a lot of bulk right in that corner. Sometimes there's just certain times where no matter which direction you press, there's a little bit more bulk than you would like. So you just try to do the best that you can. This block is like that in these corners. Once you have your corners done, then you'll simply take, of course, this is going to replace that. And this is going to come in that corner. Let me just bring everything closer to me. We want to make sure that that pieced unit is the same size as the square beneath, or the triangle beneath it. If it's not going to go together. If that's the case, you need to go back and figure out why. It could be these weren't cut properly, or maybe they weren't sewn properly, or even pressed properly. It's one of those three things. Or potentially this maybe wasn't cut the right size. But this assembled unit should literally mirror and stack right on top of that, and simply sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And in this case, we went ahead and pressed those seams toward the yellow because there's a lot of seams going on here, far less going on here. So we pressed the seam toward that. You'll make those corners. You've got your rectangles and squares. We sewed this together, pressing toward the middle on all of this. Middle, press toward the white, press toward the white, press toward the white, and then you'll sew everything together. And we went ahead and pressed toward the middle because of these seams out here. So that's all there is to making the cross and crown block with the Shabby fabrics.